Hi, I'm Linda. This is Beautiful Thrift Homemaking, and we're reading through a vintage cookbook from 1917. The cookbook is called A Thousand Ways to Please a Husband, and I have a reprint here from Dover Publications that I'm reading through. We're on chapter 33 in the month of August, following the lives of a young newlywed couple, and the wife Bettina is just excited about her homemaking, and we're going to find out what she does in the kitchen. So, after the tea. Doesn't it bore you to think of cooking when you've been out all afternoon? Asked Mrs. Dixon wearily. And today the refreshments were so elaborate and everything was so stiff and tiresome. I usually anticipate feeling this way, said Bettina, and plan to have something at home that is already prepared and that I can get together without much trouble. Then I put on a house dress as quickly as I can, for I can't bear to cook in party clothes. But I'm sure I don't know what I am going to have for dinner tonight. Bob and I had planned to go downtown to dinner with some friends, but just before I went out this afternoon, he phoned that the invitation had been withdrawn because of somebody's illness. Goodness, cried Mrs. Dixon. What will you do? Go downtown yourselves? No, Bob doesn't enjoy that, and neither do I. I can manage somehow, for, of course, there are always things in the house to get. I'll tell you. I'll phone Bob to bring Mr. Dixon here, and you can see what an emergency supper is like. Oh, I couldn't think of it. You're tired, and it's nearly 6 now. Well, what of that? You can help, and I know you're dreading to get dinner at home. We'll just combine forces. Bettina went to the telephone and called Bob. Hello, dear. Please bring Mr. Dixon home to dinner with you. Charlotte is going to stay, and if you come in his car, will you stop on the way and get a watermelon that has been on ice? Be sure it's cold. And now, she said to Mrs. Dixon, let me get into a house dress, and then for a sight of the refrigerator. Oh, what beautiful glazed apples, exclaimed Mrs. Dixon 10 minutes later. They were to have been for breakfast, but I'll have them for dinner instead. Then there are enough cold boiled potatoes for creamed potatoes, and besides that, we'll have an omelet. And then I'll stir up some emergency biscuit, and you can explain everything that you do. Well, for the omelet, we'll take 4 good-sized eggs, 1 for each of us. What else goes in it? Milk? No, I think that hot water makes a more tender omelet. Then I'll use a few grains of baking powder to assist in holding it up, though that isn't necessary. We'll beat the yolks and whites separately till they're very light. Goodness, there come the men. Here's your watermelon, Bettina, called Bob, a big fellow. Don't forget to save the rind for pickles, will you? Why, hello, Mrs. Dixon. Frank's here. The menu that night consisted of omelet, creamed potatoes, glazed apples, emergency biscuit, butter, and watermelon. And in this book we have the recipes for the omelet, the creamed potatoes, the emergency biscuit, and glazed apples. All right, so we're going to go on to chapter 34. Bettina gives a porch breakfast before we do a discussion of what we've read about. Bettina had risen early that beautiful July morning, for she had much to do. Bob had insisted upon helping her, and at 8 Ruth was coming. Such a simple breakfast after all, Bob. Do you think she'll like it? Sure she will. If she doesn't, I'll disown her. Say, Bettina, I haven't had my breakfast yet, and 10 o'clock sounds far away. May I have just 1 donut with my coffee? Why, Bobby, did I forget you? Your Aunt Elizabeth and the whole suffrage cause is on my mind this morning, but I didn't think even that could make me forget you. Help yourself to anything you see that looks good. The Aunt Elizabeth on Bettina's mind was an aunt of Bob's who was to be in town between 9 and 12 in conference with some of the leading suffragists of the city. She wished to see the bungalow, and at 10 o'clock Bettina was giving a breakfast for her and the women with whom she was to confer. It was with fear and trepidation that Bettina had invited them, although she declared to herself that she was sure of every dish on the menu. As she arranged the great graceful yellow poppies in the center of the porch table, set for 6, she was feeling somewhat nervous. "Bob, you must go now, or you'll be too late for the train. Take a taxi home, not a streetcar." "Taxi? You don't know my Aunt Elizabeth. She'd say, 'Say, young man, if you aren't saving your money any better than this, you ought to be,' and would probably end by walking." "Hurry, dear." The train proved to be late, and Ruth and Bettina were ready to the last detail. While beautiful, distinguished-looking Aunt Elizabeth was dressing, Bettina was meeting guests at the door. Before she realized it, she had introduced everybody to the guest of honor and was ushering them out to her charming porch table. "Oh, Ruth," she said in the kitchen, "isn't my Aunt Elizabeth lovely? I'll say mine now, not Bob's. I was in such a hurry that I forgot to be frightened." The breakfast consisted of molded cereal on bananas, whipped cream, codfish balls, egg souffle, green peas, Twin Mountain muffins, jelly, donuts, and coffee. And in this recipe book, we do have some recipes. We have the recipe for the codfish balls, right, the egg souffle, and the potato donuts. All right, so that's the reading for chapters 33 and 34. Join me in a moment for a discussion. All right, thanks for joining me for our discussion of chapters 33 and 34. All right, so planning meals ahead is a very good thing to do when you're going to be out all afternoon. It's good to know what you're going to prepare that evening for dinner, and Bettina models that for us. I know that we have a lot of appliances these days that are very helpful for that purpose, such as the crock pots, instant pots, and so forth. So make use of those if you have them and throw something in, or pre-cook things. In the summer, it's great to have chilled foods for dinner. So you might want to have some potato salad made, something like that, or a green salad, a fruit salad, using some of those seasonal fruits. Bettina models that for us quite a lot, doesn't she, using seasonal produce. She's going to change into her house dress before she begins preparing dinner. She's going to help Mrs. Dixon to see what it's like to prepare an emergency supper. And what she calls an emergency supper is one that she is making on the spot without any real plan ahead for it. So she is needing to make that meal because some friends they were going to go out to dinner with in town have canceled the dinner date, and therefore suddenly she needs to have a dinner at home that she hadn't planned for. And she says to Mrs. Dixon, "We'll just combine forces." And I thought that was great. So she's invited Mrs. Dixon and Mr. Dixon to come over and enjoy this meal. And to me it seems kind of like a breakfast for dinner, because she does end up making an omelet and biscuits, creamed potatoes, and she has glazed apples and a chilled watermelon that she asked Bob to pick up on his way home. Bob also mentions that he'd like to have the watermelon rind pickled and not to have it thrown out. Now the glazed apples, I will talk about the recipe for that because that was kind of interesting to see how that was done. She takes 6 apples and 1.5 cups of sea sugar, which we've decided is white sugar, granulated. No, I'm sorry. I think we decided the sea sugar was brown sugar. Thank you. I just got that mixed up there. So 1.5 cups of water and 1 teaspoon of butter. Boil the sugar and water for 6 minutes in a deep saucepan. Do not stir. Pare and core the apples. Place them in the syrup as soon as pared to prevent them from discoloring. Cook until apples are tender. Remove the apples from the syrup and boil the sugar and water longer if it is not thick enough. Add the butter to the syrup and pour in and around the apples. Serve hot or cold. Granulated sugar may be used, but sea sugar gives it better flavor. Okay, so I don't know if you've had that. It's kind of like a baked apple, but this is done on the stovetop, which is interesting. It sounds very, very sweet and awfully sugary. So if you're trying to avoid sugar as much as I am, then you're also not going to want to try that recipe at home. All right. But it does sound yummy, doesn't it? And then what she calls the emergency biscuits. Those are just regular biscuits, but she, instead of rolling out the dough and cutting them with a biscuit cutter, she's going to do the drop biscuit method. So she's going to put some of the batter or the dough on a spoon and plop it down on the baking pan and bake them that way. And I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's a very quick way to make your biscuits. And so that's why she's calling it an emergency biscuit. And here we have, again, the good old white sauce employed in the creamed potatoes recipe. She uses a cup of white sauce for that. She puts a little bit of chopped pimento. Pimento is a popular ingredient in her recipes. She's also using a tablespoon of chopped parsley. And again, paprika, which is another very common ingredient for her. So she's taking some cold diced potatoes, sprinkling salt and pepper on them, then stirring it into the vegetable white sauce, adding the pimento and the parsley, cooking for 3 minutes, stirring constantly. In the comment about whether she should add some milk to the egg when she's beating it up to make an omelet, I thought interesting, because she says, no, let's not use milk for that. It tends to make the eggs tougher. Let's use hot water. Of course, if you're adding hot water into raw eggs, you're going to need to temper the eggs and get them stir them very quickly as you're slowly adding the hot water, or else the eggs are starting to scramble in the bowl before you start cooking them. And she also put a few grains of baking powder in her omelet to cause it to rise more. So those were the things that went on for that chapter. Then she has a porch party for one of Bob's aunts, Aunt Elizabeth, and all three of her friends are in town for a conference. And this part was interesting because now we have something that's very historically specific. So 1917 is when this cookbook was written, and we are on the side of the women getting the right to vote. We're before that time period, just ahead of it, because in the United States, women achieved the right to vote in 1920 when that was added to as an amendment to our Constitution. But before 1920, women did not vote in the United States. So we have 1917, 18, 19, 20 there. We have this 2.5, 3 years where women aren't voting yet, and the suffrage movement, as they call it, was active. And here we're having a conference in the town, and Bob's Aunt Elizabeth is going to be attending that conference. She is a big suffragist, and she has a couple of 3 friends that are going to come over to Bettina's. Bettina has her friend Ruth with her. They're going to sit on the porch and have a late breakfast. And I like this. She declared to herself that she was sure of every dish on the menu. Yellow poppies were the centerpiece. And the menu then I thought was peculiar. For my experience and my time frame, I wouldn't have chosen to be sure about this menu as Bettina was. So what do you think about molded cereal on bananas? Molded meaning formed in a little mound. So maybe a cold cooked cereal like cream of wheat or oatmeal. that then has been pressed into a mold and turned upside down onto the plate with some banana slices under it. And then codfish balls. I'm going to look at that. So raw salt fish, raw potatoes, butter, cracker crumbs, egg beaten, salt and pepper, and a little water. You're going to shred the fish, pare and quarter potatoes, place the fish and the potatoes in a stew pan and cover with boiling water. Boil 25 minutes or till the potatoes are soft. Do not boil too long or they will become soggy. Drain well, mash and beat until light. Add butter, seasoning, and egg. Shape, roll in crumbs, egg, more crumbs, and fry in deep fat. These may be shaped into flat cakes, rolled in flour and sautéed in hot fat. Garnish with parsley. So that's what the codfish balls are. And then the egg souffle was also served, and that was a dish that included another episode here of white sauce and a little bit more paprika. And then we have some of her muffins that she calls the twin mountain muffins, and we have some potato donuts. So the potatoes actually have some hot mashed potatoes in them. The donuts actually have some hot mashed potatoes in them, which if you've ever had potato bread or potato cinnamon rolls, it really makes a nice moist bread. So, alrighty. So I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll talk to you soon.